Well, joining us now is Ajay Banga, the CEO and president of MasterCard, a good friend and a supporter of women in the world. Ajay is making it a mission to get women out of their economies by poverty and circumstance all over the world, a place on the ladder. How? By providing them with something you might not think about, proof of identity. Now, Ajay's own identity is in itself pretty fascinating. I mean, how many Sikhs do you know who are CEO of a Fortune 500 company with 5,000 employees working in more than 37 offices around the world with a market value of over $100 million? Ajay is the son of a decorated Indian general from the Punjab, and all of his formal education was in India, from preschool to business school. From there, he ascended the ranks of the world's corporations to the top: Nestle, PepsiCo, Citigroup, and in 2009, he joined MasterCard. Just last year, President Obama appointed him to his President's Advisory Committee for Trade Policy and Negotiations. So it's my pleasure to welcome him now. Good to have you with us, Ajay. So now, since joining MasterCard, you've devoted a lot of personal time and energy to liberating the energies of women, both in hiring policies and the very interesting work that you're doing with identity. Why have you made women such a focus in this whole program?
Well, I was listening to you at the beginning in the morning, and you talked about this lady from Iran who said that she had too much hair, and I wouldn't kind of pass that test either. So I'm just kidding. I have a family. I'm surrounded by women, my wife and 2 daughters, and my wife's been my friend from the time I was 19 years old at business school, and so this is 37 years together. And she and I have a common view about the fact that our children are growing up in this world and they deserve nothing but the best, because I believe them to be as good as anybody else. Mm-hmm. And I refuse to have left my time and go away and say, I didn't make a difference for their future. And if I'm going to make it for their future, there are many others like them, ladies, girls, who deserve the same opportunity and the same right to have the same success that you tell me I've had. Mm-hmm. And I see no reason why they shouldn't. So that's part of the first, a very personal sense of that. One of my daughters, by the way, works for a lady who's going to come out on stage in a little while, which is Indra Nui, and she loves being there, and at Pepsi. And I worked at Pepsi some years ago. Why shouldn't she have the same opportunity that somebody like Indra has driven in her company for women? So that's the first thing. Mm-hmm. The second part of this is more about a comprehension that if half the world's population is unable to find the right opportunities to succeed and the right partnerships, how do we expect our world to keep growing and creating more opportunities for jobs, for growth, for humanity to prosper, if half the population is underutilized, subjugated, and basically not able to get what they deserve? Mm-hmm. So that's kind of, to me, a very simple logic. And the third logic is very close to our own company. Somewhere between 60 and 80% of purchasing decisions are made by women around the world. We're in a business that enables, through technology and infrastructure, people to make purchases and create commerce in a way that makes it seamless for them, no matter what they're doing and where they came from. And so that's kind of the reason that the company sees this as a real opportunity to get rid of cash and put people into electronic payments. You've got to align all of these thinkings to get a public company to enable a personal ambition of a CEO to change this in his lifetime.
Well, it's an amazing goal. Now, tell us why this identity question is so critical. Explain to this audience why identity and these identity cards have become such a kind of focus for you.
Well, the fact is that there are 2 billion people around the world who lack access to some form of financial account, any form. And all of them don't have an identity. The majority of those are women. 46% of women do not have access to any form of financial capability. So they're operating in the shadows. You don't have an account, you can't get even government benefits. You can't vote. If you don't have an identity, you basically don't even know your birth date in many countries around the world. In parts of India, they used to tie knots on a rope to remember that a year went by. That's like being in prison. And so not having an identity is effectively a prison for you. It's a prison that you cannot break out of without getting a digital or physical identity that certifies who you are, where you live, and in some cases nowadays, your biometrics. And if you do that, getting people to then get financially included becomes much easier, because the route to financial inclusion is through opening an account of some type with a financial institution. No financial institution around the world can open an account for you without what's called KYC, which is Know Your Customer. An identity issued by the government of that country is one of the best KYC methods for a bank. If you want the banks around the world to jump into the act of creating scale on financial inclusion, you need to create identities. If you don't create the identity and you don't get it issued to people, they will remain trapped in that prison that I was talking about. That's the issue.
It's absolutely fascinating. How do you get these identity cards to them, though? Because the fact is that they're not digitally reachable, and you have this massive amount of people who, as you say, are living in the shadows. How do you give them this news, and how do you give them this card?
Well, that's the biggest challenge, and that's what's been the issue that's held back this thing from becoming a very obvious one to lots of people. For a long time, the public sector and the private sector and the NGOs, the whole combination of civil society and private sector, believed that the way to get people into the world of financial inclusion was to just use the phone that they had. And somehow everybody had a phone, people didn't have a bank account, oh, there you go, problem solved, just put the money on the phone. Right, what do you do with the damn money on the phone if you can't take it out? You can't eat a phone. At least you could, but it's not a good idea. And so, it's such a fallacy of this argument. You have to create the whole ecosystem that first allows people to have some form of an account. Just think about this, Tina. Everybody is going around with their hair on fire talking about the Internet of Things, how our Barbie dolls and our fridges are going to be connected to the Internet, and that's going to be a great new world. But guess what? If you don't have an account, it'll be the Internet of everything, but not the Internet of everyone. That's crap.
Right.
And it's not that far away. Right? That's why this thing is mission critical. So the issue is, how do you get it there? Well, you've got examples around the world. You've got examples that we are doing and helping with in South Africa, in Nigeria, in Egypt. Let me just pick one and I'll walk you through it. So in South Africa, what happens is that partnering with a bank and other companies and the government agency for Social Security, it's called SASSA, with them, you take a mobile kit to people's homes who are eligible for Social Security, and you get them registered with their fingerprint and their iris and their voice being recorded on that mobile kit. And then you issue them a card of the type you saw in the video at the end. That actually is a South African lady. And that card allows them to receive the money every week or every fortnight on the card. So first of all, you don't have what's called, in NGO circles, it's called leakage. Leakage is, in normal people's language, is theft. You can't steal the money along the way because you have no control on that woman, because now she gets the money straight on a card from the government and the bank on that card. And she can go to an ATM or a shop, either take out the money or buy potatoes, onions, whatever she wants. If she's ill, now is where the phone comes in use. She can call anybody in the Social Security office, voice recognition, they know it's her. They'll send an inspector to her house with a fingerprint reader and give her the cash right there. So what happens is you've got the identity, which means you know it's the right person, and you've got the card, which means it's the right amount of money, and nobody's stealing it in between. And by the way, you don't have to be caught with tons of money coming out of the agent's office, which is how you used to get it earlier. You don't get stolen along the way in Soweto. You don't get beaten by the guy who supposedly is taking rent from you to live in a little tin shack. All that changes. And it's just as simple as that once you get committed to the idea.
Absolutely fascinating. Do they, is there any pushback from the people that you go to door to door, that your agents go to door to door? Because you might think that people would feel, oh my God, the law is coming, I'm going to be found, I'm going to be, what is this invasion of my privacy that somebody's arriving and wanting my fingerprints and my iris?
Privacy is a luxury that rich people have. And privacy is a real, it's an issue for that poor lady in South Africa. If she's going to get beaten by the guy who supposedly is renting her house, she's quite happy to get this card. I have a very vivid memory of a lady called Hilda who pulled this card out of a certain attachment of her body and showed it to me and said, I exist, I belong, and you did it for me.
Wow.
And I didn't actually. It's a partnership of many people together. But that's how powerful the idea is. And by the way, you can do this through a physical card, or like in Egypt, we're doing it on a phone, where the government of Egypt is going to issue digital identities to 54 million adult Egyptians, only 14 million of whom today have an account of any type. All of them, we've built a wallet. It'll go onto the phone in collaboration with all the phone companies and all the banks of Egypt. All the money will come into that. Your remittances, your gifts, your part-time money, your salary. You get to use it by having a card. You get to use it by being connected to a bill payment engine for your utilities, so you don't have to stand in a queue. And by the way, if you're an hourly paid worker, standing in a queue in Egypt or India to pay your electricity bill for 4 hours is a very expensive bill to pay. And so all that gets sorted out with just, you need public-private partnerships. You need enlightened governments. You need, of course, the help of civil society. But you also need companies that are willing to bring their technology and skills to the table. And that's the combination.
It's an extraordinary initiative and kind of transformative by the sound of things. But I mean, let's talk about some of the issues that women here in the US and elsewhere are also running up against. And we hear endlessly about work-life balance. We hear endlessly about attrition. Women in the, quote, pipeline, they get to a certain level, they then fall off a cliff and disappear, and those numbers at the top, really reduce. It's been a steady decline. How do you try to solve that at MasterCard? How are you keeping women engaged in the pipeline, getting to the top and not dropping out because they feel that work-life balance is impossible?
So it's the single hardest thing to do in transforming a company to really respect diversity. I mean, first of all, because we're in the technology business and the infrastructure business, there is a deep realization in our company that without innovation, we're dead. Because the cycle of innovation in our kind of business is getting faster and faster and quicker and more rapid, and more people are trying to find ways to disintermediate existing models of business. So you've got to be nimble on your feet as well. And I learned a lesson long ago, which is that if you surround yourself with people who look like you and walk like you and talk like you and have the same backgrounds and education as you, then very soon you will end up missing the same things that are happening around you because you're going to have the same blind spots.
Yeah.
So surrounding yourself with people who are different from you is the best thing you can do for yourself, both as a manager, as a CEO, but even as anybody who is in any form of business or any form of enterprise. And so for me, having women who can surround our team and give them their perspectives and feed into how they think is critical. Now, I start with some benefit. We've got my CFO is a woman. The person who runs 60% of my revenue is a lady whom I hired about a year into the company. The lady in technology who connects, it's a lady now. The person in technology who connects all our customers with our capable systems is a woman. The person in technology who connects all our products and platforms with our technology is a woman. So we've had some of this going on, but you've got to keep working on it. And so what I'm trying to do is 3 or 4 things. One is we have a lab, a R&D lab, and we put products through that into incubation. As it so happens, 3 products are in incubation. All 3 are being run by women. If you think about how to develop them, you've got to give them mentors. You've got to give them the ability to succeed. You've got to pay them fairly. And I can tell you that in our company, we've done this appraisal year after year. It's hard work, but I can tell you, every woman gets paid exactly what a man gets paid for the work they do. Every single woman. Everyone. And it's not enough that my CFO is the second highest paid person in the company. That's not the point. The point is not one person. The point is every single woman gets paid exactly what a man would get paid for the same work. Mm-hmm. And if somebody gets in my way on that, they will be working in one of my competitors very quickly. It's a very simple system.
And how do you transition women in these passages in their lives when they do want to spend time with their family?
So that's the second part.
Because it's become such a thorny problem. And also, by the way, I'm sympathetic as an employer how difficult it can be when key people go off on their maternity leave. I mean, how do you handle that?
Well, so first you've got to have mentors for them. You've got to have role models. That's the first part. Second part is the paying. Third part is this. And in that, we've actually gone to the extreme now where we've women in our company who go to have a child, which, by the way, biology determines that you end up with the kid, not me. It's just reality. And so they're going to go. And we want them to, because that's where our futures are. And so we give them 16 weeks, that's 4 months, of fully paid leave with no impact on their bonus either. Mm-hmm. Right? So that they don't have to worry about somebody whistle. Okay, that's cool. They don't have to worry about the fact that they're going to lose that income in the process. Now, we've also gone to the other extreme where we've provided parental leave for the male partner in our company, where they get 8 weeks of fully paid leave with no impact on their bonus, even if their wife is working in a different company.
That's great too.
So when Indra comes out, you should tell her and remind her that the women in her company who have babies, whose husbands are working in MasterCard, that's just across the road, she owes me. Just remind her. Right? So that's the first part. The second part is you have got to be able to ensure that they can come back to work at the end of those 4 months in a way that allows them to fit their needs in life. So one of the things we're doing, Tina, is to let them come back for half a day, 1 day, 2 days, and build it back up to what enables them to have a smoother journey to re-entry. And don't disconnect for the 4 months you're away, because it takes away your confidence and your link with your colleagues when you're away for 4 months in a completely different environment with a very big event happening in your life. So what you got to do is to allow them to come back and bring their kids to work for a few days. And all of a sudden, everybody's happy to see them back. They're happy to be back. It just changes the dialogue and the mood about how you should want to have this done. Mm-hmm. So,
well, one of the great things I think about India, is the family dynamic, is how the family is there to support a woman. And yeah. I mean, obviously, you were raised in India, and you can see that in America it's very different. Is that a lot of women are single parents. A lot of women have no structure around them. How does it feel to you, having been raised in a very different culture of women available to help in childcare?
Well, having people available to help you in childcare is only one aspect of having respect for the woman. And there's a lot of other issues in India that you can read about in the papers that don't make you feel great about being a young girl growing up in India. So I think this is a full picture story, not a one item story. And I think providing good childcare and providing the capabilities for women to have access to their childcare in this country is something we all need to work more on. We're doing it in our own way with space in the office, with some compensation and so on. I still think this is the tip of the iceberg. You got to get to where women feel completely confident that they can pass through this period and this phase, and their kid will still be well looked after, and they can get right back to work. And that, to me, is still wet ink in almost all of America.
Right. No, it's a huge, fascinating topic. We're going to continue to explore that topic, actually, with Indra. This year's election is really one, for the record books, and it's brought a kind of ugly. I mean, it really has. It's brought up a kind of ugly misogyny to the fore. How do we get to the mindset of men to change this? Because, whether it's what's happening in India, which you mentioned, which is at times so distressing, or indeed what's happening in the United States, unless we can change the mindset of men towards women, there's nothing that women can do more than they're doing to, quote, lean in. I mean, we have to actually educate men, correct?
I completely agree. I think, frankly, men have to take ownership of this issue in many ways. But, Tina, it starts from small issues. You were talking about India, and suddenly this memory came back to me. I was asked this question in an event in India in January by a young Indian girl who basically said, similar question. And I kind of said to her, it starts when you're very young. So when you're young in your home, and let's say there's a girl and a boy in the house, and guests come, you will find the mother and the father will ask the boy to sit with the guests, while the girl will be sent to help her mother in the kitchen to bring tea and snacks for the guests. That is a subliminal message of not being equal. It starts from that.
Yeah.
And I find that reprehensible. now that I'm old enough to understand the implication of this, better late than never, right? But I've kind of understood that issue. And I don't know how to change it. But I know that the man in the house, the father in that case, has got to have a role where he doesn't allow that to happen. But the mother has a role too, where she can see that this would lead to the same thing for her daughter that happened to her. We both got to take ownership. Both genders have got to take ownership of the situation in small ways. I know there are big things to solve, but there are small things we can change in the way people think within educated families about how their girls should be treated.
Well, MasterCard's turning 50 this year, and where the technology, I mean, it's such an important factor.
I'm older than that.
Tech is such a huge factor at MasterCard. The figures in STEM for women are very, very poor. How do you recruit those women, and how are they going to change MasterCard over the next 50 years?
So 60% of the women in our company work in a technology or technology-related job. So first of all, one of the things that bugs me enormously is this thing that women don't work in technology. It's bullshit, right? It's just nonsense. And it's not, it's a myth.
Love the candor of this guy. It's like, at least you know where you stand, right?
It's a myth that needs to be killed, right? Now, there is a problem that we find even in our own recruiting. You send recruiting teams of women and men to co-educational schools of engineering, which is a large focus for us of recruiting people who are engineers. And they come back with a lot of men. So it's a trick. You just send them to girls' schools of engineering. They can't come back with men. And it kind of works pretty well. And so we started doing this very systematic. It actually sounds funny, but it's actually very simple. So we started doing it now as a matter of recruitment. We send our recruitment teams not only to co-educational schools of engineering, but also to women's-only schools of engineering. And it changes the mix of people that you bring in. I think there's a deeper issue, which is, are there enough women going into STEM education and careers? And, you know, my approach has been in our company that let me solve for my company to get the right role models into the place and get the right women into it. I don't know that all of us can boil the ocean to solve for the bigger issue, which to me is a real issue, of why enough women don't feel that going into STEM education and STEM careers is absolutely the right thing for them. Our company is an example where it is the right thing. As I said, 60% of women in our company are in technology and technology-related jobs. You're more than welcome to come join us.
Well, what do you think that what's going to happen in this tech front for MasterCard? We only have another minute, so tell us, 50 years from now, what are going to be the big things?
Yeah, first of all, I'll be dead, which is a good thing.
Well, let's say 20 years.
20 years.
20 years we can handle.
20 years, I should probably be around, but I probably won't be doing this. So, no, all the jokes aside. I think we still have a long way to go on the issue of getting enough women to come through the pipe all the way to the top. Not just CEOs like Indra, whom I admire, but even on boards, because they create role models. We've got 25% of our board is women. Yeah, better than some companies, clearly not good enough. Why not 50? Why is 30 the right number suddenly, right? And I think we make a mistake when we put a number out there saying, let's sign up for 30. Why? And so those are the kind of things that there's so much progress to be made. But even more, there's progress in every form of leadership. You need women who lead countries. I hope we have one soon. You have people who should be... You can see where I'm going, right? We need to have women as CEOs on boards. We need to have women in private sector and public sector. We need people like Ms. Cousins of the World Food Program. We need more like that, not a few. We need many more. And I think we've got a long way to go as yet. We need men to take ownership as much as women do of this issue. And I'm kind of hoping you'll see more of that, not just in our company, but with everybody else.
Well, listen, Ajay, it's wonderful to have a man like you in this leadership position. And it is. And, you know, it's wonderful to have you as a friend of women in the world. You've been candid and you've been forthright, and we've learned so much today. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much. Thank you, folks. Thank you.